How's it going, everybody, and welcome to episode 152 of Master My Garden podcast. Now, this week's episode is one that I've done before, but it's time I sort of changed it up a little bit. So for the last 2 years, around this time, I've done Christmas gifts for gardeners. And to be honest with you, I'm a bit conscious that every time I do that, it's, I suppose, things that I would like or that I would see as a good gift for gardeners, but it doesn't always necessarily mean that it would represent all gardeners out there. So I'm also quite conscious that my perspective might be in more of a male perspective. So for this year's episode, which is Christmas Gifts for Gardeners 2022 version, I'm joined by Natasha Tierney. And Natasha is a gardener. She is a physiotherapist in her day job, but she's a gardener and loves her garden. And I suppose from my perspective, what I really like about Natasha and her page is that she's very much I'm going to try this, and she seems to get stuck in. She talks about what works, what doesn't work, but she's always kind of having a go and has very, very good success. Some things that stood out from this year were a sweet pea TP, which is a bit of a tongue twister in itself, but also creeping thyme, pathways, and brand new border started from scratch. And as I say, all of this grown from seeds, so very, very much, you know, the type of gardener that Master My Garden podcast sort of caters to. So her page is DIY and Dreams, and it's, as I say, a lot of it is documenting her gardening journey. But as I say, a great gardener, and it'll be interesting to have a female perspective on Christmas gifts. So Natasha, you're very, very welcome to Master My Garden podcast.
Thank you so much, John. That was a lovely intro.
You're very welcome. Yeah, as I say, your garden and your page. So if I'm right, you're gardening up the country somewhere up Cavan, Meath direction. Cavan.
Yes.
Very good.
Cavan for my troubles. So I have a lot to deal with up here.
Yeah, I've seen you were planting a hedge last year, and I saw you were planting almost on top of rock.
On bedrock, yeah.
Yeah.
We're probably on a drumlin here, so it's just pretty much rock. It's either rock or bog. So every time I go to dig a hole, I need a pick and a crowbar.
But you're very successful, and as I said, what you're doing is like you're doing almost everything. And like flowers is your thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I love flowers. Yeah.
And so you seem to be doing it kind of 99% from your own seed, which is brilliant. And you obviously have some experience, but you seem to be talking about learning as you go as well, which is great.
Absolutely. I mean, this time last year, I was sowing seed for the first time. So I had never sowed anything from seed before. I think I'd bought a couple of plants. That was it.
Oh, I thought now, you know, based on what I've seen on your stories and so on, that you're like at it for a longer time than that.
Oh, no. So when we moved to the house here, we'd nothing. We had rented every year for about 7 years. I think we moved 7 times in 7 years. So I never had a garden. So last year was the first year I actually sowed seeds in the ground. So using milk cartons and things like that. And the success of my autumn sowing last year encouraged me. And then it just kind of exploded in spring. Yeah.
So you started this time last year or a little bit earlier last year. Wow. And so tell us a little bit about what you've done. I mentioned the sweet pea TP and the creeping thyme paths, and you've done all of this pretty much yourself. Like, so tell us
I mean, I think what happened, we made planters for the front of the house, and I had to buy plants to put them into it, and realized how expensive gardening was. And after that, I got so much joy from that in the first year that I just followed people on Instagram, just gardeners on Instagram, people learning as they go, figuring out what worked. I basically just looked at what was blooming every year. I made a little plan. And by autumn last year, I had a bit of a plan that I was going to basically make a garden from seed. Wow. Because I had no budget. Myself and my husband had a very short conversation where we established that we had no money for a garden. So I knew the only way I was going to be able to do it is from seed. So I think once I focused on it, I was never able to keep a sunflower alive that my kid brought home from school. So this was a massive deal for me. So I think once I put my focus on it, and I knew I wouldn't have a garden without actually growing it from seed, my focus kind of shifted completely. And then once you get a few things germinating, it's like a little buzz that you get from gardening. It feels amazing.
Wow. And what is it? Is it the pride of, and we're going off topic here in terms of the podcast episode, but is it the pride of sowing your seed and then seeing the flower come to fruition, or is it the, I don't know, the benefits of seeing the pollinators on it, or what is it for you that, you know, hooks
It's a bit of everything. I think I got there was a lot of surprises. So every morning when I go out and I'd hear and I'd see the bees jumping from flower to flower, that was an extra that I didn't even know I was going to get.
Right.
That was just absolutely lovely. There's something about seeing bees hopping from your own plants that you've grown from seed, hopping from flower to flower.
Yeah.
It just makes you feel like everything's right with the world, when obviously it's not. Everything's not okay with the world, but it gives you a sense of peace. But no, it was more that I like visualizing a plan. So I like drawing a plan, visualizing what's going to be in it, visualizing the flowers, the design and everything, and then sowing the plants that I want to make that happen, basically. So it's more about the vision and making the vision happen. It's that creative process that I really like.
Yeah, brilliant. And I can see, because in prep for this episode, you sent me a list, which is very comprehensive and well laid out. As opposed
I like Excel spreadsheets.
Yeah, you do. My list is scribbled on the book here beside me. Obviously, I've done the last 2 years, so I do have a blog post of it, and I do have the 2 episodes previously. But I know by your organization on this list that in terms of seed sowing, I can see why you will be successful, because you're planning it out and you're thinking about it strategically.
Yeah.
Albeit that the end result is very, very natural and all the rest of it. So
it depends on the person, but I have a project management background, so I can't help myself. I have to plan.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So in terms of the episode itself, Christmas gifts for gardeners, as I mentioned, I've covered this over the last 2 Christmases, or on the run up to the last 2 Christmases, and I'm a little bit conscious that, I suppose, what I've talked about on the podcast previously, because I have talked about, you know, things I'd like, very practical things, and how I got a leaf blower for one of my presents, and how I was very excited about that, whereas I know that for other people that may not be of any interest. So to sort of change it up a little bit, as I say, a female perspective, but it's funny, there is kind of crossovers. I guess gardeners are gardeners, whichever way you look at it. So there is crossover, but the first one that you have on your list, and it's something that I had spoken about before, so we might just kind of run through them, is books. And in today's world, obviously, if somebody wants to learn how to knit a jumper, they'll go onto YouTube. If they want to know how to hang a shelf, they'll go onto YouTube. And in some cases, and in a lot of cases, if they want to know how to sow seeds, they'll go onto YouTube. But I still do think gardening books is one of the few books that, you know, that actually is something that people appreciate and will use and will continue to use, for a few reasons. Number one, it gives you inspiration. Number two, visually, they can look very, very good. So, and I suppose that's been borne out because there's still a lot more gardening books being produced and written than there is sort of books in other areas. So books is the first one on your list, and a great topic. So tell us about your list of books, and I might throw in a few of my own then as well.
Oh yeah, okay. So I have 3 on here that actually I don't have, but are on my wish list. Hint, hint, husband. I'll send this list to him. And then there's 3 that I got last year for my husband. Now I did hand him a list. So, but even this is why gifts are so important, because even if you have to tell the person what you would really like, it's still lovely getting that book or that gift that you really want. So the first 3 is, I want to put in an Irish one here, and it's only just out this year. I think it's this year anyway. Gardening Together by Gavin and Paul Smyth.
Yeah.
Now I've heard loads of good reports on this. I don't have it myself, but I'd love to get my hands on it. I also like it because it's an Irish book.
Yeah.
So the other 2 on this are The Complete Gardener by Monty Don, only because I love Monty Don so much. Yeah. And I've heard loads of great reviews about it. A lot of gardeners that I follow use it as a reference a lot. And the same with the RHS Gardening Through the Year. It's a really good reference book. It has a lot of really good pictures, ideas of what's blooming at different times of the year and that kind of thing. It's just, I think it's really nice to have some reference books for like different types of shrubs, different types of flowers, what's available in different times of the year, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and they're the three that you don't have.
They're the three that I don't have. Yeah.
Okay, so that makes it easy for somebody.
Yeah. I'll share a link to this list. So yeah, I don't have any of those reference books. I'm actually still using my granddad's gardening books that he has notes in from 1970 something. So, and like not much has changed except for what's available. There's more things available in Ireland now than they used to be, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. And what, like, is there any names on those? Just because I have a lot of books here from parents, grandparents as well, gardening books, and some of them, I don't think there's any going back. What you said, 1960s?
They were 1960s, 70s.
Wow.
He used to do a lot of talks. He was the head of the gardening club in our local town.
So now we see where the gardening is coming from.
I don't know. It took a while, but it got here eventually.
Yeah, so yeah, I have a lot of old gardening books. I'm just looking across at the shelf here, and there is a lot of old ones in it.
I think one was called The Flower Expert. I don't have them here to hand, but what was interesting was he had little notes of, he would get little snips of different people, and he put the date in and where he got it from, and then he would order stuff on catalogs from the UK way back then. So yeah, and he used to graft different trees. We'd write down his method and stuff in the book, so it's lovely getting those books.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And like, that is a big thing with books that obviously you can't have with any other form of learning, is that in years to come somebody else might pick up that book. And you know, like, that is a really nice connection, to be fair. You mentioned Irish books, and I know, as I say, flowers are your thing mostly, but there's a couple of, well, there's one book that I actually have here. I don't have any of the three that you mentioned that you don't have either, so I can't comment on them one way or the other as to you know what they're like. But one I have here that I think I've mentioned before, it's A Beautiful Obsession by Jimmy Blake. So Jimmy Blake, Huntingbrook Gardens.
Oh yes.
And that book is inspirational, really is inspirational book, but it's very practical at the same time. So sometimes you get a book that's very, very inspirational, and you can look at it and you can kind of see, right, I might do that or that, but it's not very practical in its explanation or anything like that. Whereas I think Jimmy's book hits both of those points, and really, really good one. And in terms of an Irish book, it's, you know, it's right up there with the best of them.
Lovely.
Again,
I was at his sister's garden, but I wasn't at his.
Yeah, fantastic garden. Now, I haven't been in 2 years, but so it would be good to see it again. But the book is phenomenal. Then just on Irish books again, and I know, as I say, veg is not necessarily your thing, but Klaus Leitenberger's books on veg are top class. So there's a few of those. There's an Irish vegetable year, I think, and it goes through it month by month. A little bit like what you mentioned there, Gardening Through the Year by Ian Spence, is it?
Yeah.
So yeah, a little bit like that, and he has a polytunnel book as well. So they're kind of good Irish books as well. And then onto the three that you do have. So yeah,
so these were all presents for Christmas last year and for my birthday. And the great thing about getting these books at Christmas, I find, is it's probably the most likely time you're going to actually sit down and flick through a book when you're not maybe at work. And it's a great time for planning. So if you're in the depths of winter and you've no garden, there's nothing happening outside, and you can look at a book and you can start visualizing and planning, it's a really good time to sort of get your ideas together. So good time to get these kind of books. So I was really into growing a lot of dahlias and cut flowers basically last winter. So The Flower Farmer's Year by Georgie Newbery, and The Florets Farm Cut Flower Garden by Erin. I don't know how to pronounce this.
I can't see it. I need to put on my glasses.
But these are two, they're really, really popular books.
Benzakein.
Yeah, they sort of go into detail on how to manage cut flower gardens, if that's the way you're going to go. And I mean, I didn't have a cut flower garden this year, but it gave me an insight into how professionals do it and how to get the best out of your cut flower garden and that kind of thing. So it also gives you, like, it's just very visual as well. Like if you're a gardener, you're probably like into flowers, you're probably quite visual, and it's lovely to be able to just flick through and see how those flowers, what they look like in a bouquet with other flowers, and what you could plant in your garden that you would have lovely bouquets of flowers and what would look good together. It's also really, really good for information on foliage. So the backdrop of, like, if you want to put a bouquet of flowers together, what will look good with it? Because sometimes you kind of forget, you think about all the flowers and you forget about what's the really nice foliage that's going to back it up.
Yeah.
So really good information on all that kind of thing in those books. The third book I absolutely love. Now, if you're into dried flowers at all, Everlastings by Bex Partridge is a stunning book. It's beautiful to look at, and it basically gives you a comprehensive list of all the flowers that you can dry, when to pick them, when to sow them, everything you need really, and how to dry them. And then it shows you sort of crafts and different things you can do with them when you have them dried. So I think it's a lovely, lovely book. If you're any bit creative at all and you like dried flowers, it's a good one to have.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's actually my favorite book out of the whole lot of them.
Right. And so that's Everlastings by Bex Partridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, class.
And they're not expensive books either. They're really affordable.
Good. So, like, books, as we mentioned, that's really is a great Christmas gift for a gardener. I suppose the only thing about it is you do need to know what the gardener already has. So you have to do a little bit of investigation beforehand. But in terms of, you know, longevity and in terms of the gardener getting something out of it, I think books are top class. There's so many books that I have here. Again, a lot of them were handed down. And you reference back to them all the time. You mightn't spend any great length of time reading them, but you're referencing back for something or other. And I think for that reason, they're much better than, you know, the other forms of learning, particularly for gardening. And I think it is a little bit unique to gardening. I could be wrong, but I think it is a little bit unique to gardening.
Yeah, I think so. And I think a lot of gardeners are tactile. They like holding a book and like flicking through a book. I know I feel like that about a book rather than getting it on Kindle or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. So the next, I suppose, kind of topic or range that you have on your list is subscriptions. And I don't think this is one I had kind of mentioned or talked about before, but it is an interesting one. So essentially you're talking about subscriptions for magazines here. So you've mentioned a few of them. You've actually gone to great detail. You've mentioned the price as well. So tell us about those.
I had to look into it because I used to get subscriptions all the time. My page used to be just DIY, so I was into interior design. So I used to always get interior design magazines every month or every 6 months. But with Brexit, it's made it really difficult now because a lot of them the subscription services are usually based in the UK.
Right.
So it's a lot more expensive than it used to be. So that's why I kind of had to go into detail to figure out if it's even still possible, because the two that you'd always see on the shelves here in Ireland are Gardener's World and Gardener's Illustrated, which are UK magazines. Now it's expensive enough to get a yearly subscription, but it's just lovely. Like if you get a gift of that, it's just lovely landing on your door every month, and it's a lovely surprise. Yeah.
And a little bit like where I was saying about the books, where somebody might have the book already and you need to know if they have it. With the subscription, then you know they don't. So for the next 12 months, they're getting a brand new, never seen before magazine full of gardening hints and tips. So very, very good idea.
There is an Irish one, the Irish Garden, and it's a lot more affordable. And it's out every month as well.
Yeah, and I had Jerry Daly on the podcast over a year ago, or maybe more than a year ago now, and I know at that time the Irish Garden was starting to go through a change and a revamp, and it certainly has done that now. And for anyone that hasn't looked into it in a while, the Irish Garden is really good now. It's they have some excellent writers, kind of newish writers brought in over the last few years. The range of topics they're covering is broad. Yeah. So, and imagery and everything, like it looks visually very, very well. So I think now, and it's under the suite of the Farmer's Journal now. So it's, you know, from that kind of, I don't know, suite of publications, which includes Irish Country magazine and so on. So, you know, there's an influence there that is definitely improving the magazine and will strengthen the magazine go forward. So it's great to see the Irish Garden going back well. So in terms of price, the Irish Garden, according to your list here, is
€40 for the year.
Wow, that's good, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now that's for 6 publications, isn't it? I think. Not sure it's monthly. I'd have to check that.
I think it's bi-monthly. I think it's every second month.
Yeah, so that's.
But yeah. So, and I agree with what you're saying, because my mum buys the magazine and she drops it over to me then after. But there's a lot of information on what you should be doing at different times of the year, tips on, you know, when you're pruning back, what you should be doing every month. So I find it really like a really good magazine now.
Brilliant.
So Gardener's World and the Gardeners Illustrated are €95 and €92. They're available by subscriptions.com. So that's including the shipping and everything. So at least you know it's all included in that.
Yeah, that's not bad. Yeah. And they're, I think Gardener's World anyway, I'm not sure about Gardeners Illustrated, but Gardener's World is monthly, I think.
Yes, they're all monthly, yeah.
Brilliant.
12 issues.
So that's a good, I hadn't thought about subscriptions previously, I don't think. At least I don't think I mentioned them previously. So that's a good one. Your next kind of group is an interesting one, because I posted on this previously. I mentioned it in one of the podcasts about a seed hamper and basically gathering up. So if you know somebody's into veg gardening, you gather up a hamper of veg seeds and package them up and send them across to them. And again, that's a little bit the same. If they already have the seeds, there's a bit of a crossover. And when it comes to flowers, then you don't always know that somebody loves the flower that you're sending them. So
yeah,
will it ever get sown? But you've done it slightly differently. So you've done collections. So cut flower collection, dried flower collection. So you've done some really interesting ones there. So tell us about those.
So the reason I picked these was because even if you know somebody who's gardening, and they will know what specific, because gardeners are sowing flowers, they will know exactly what seeds they want and what they want in their garden. But some of these, well, a lot of these actually are annuals, so they probably wouldn't be sown until spring anyway. So Christmas is a really good time to give these.
Yeah.
So the cut flower seed collection, a lot of these are annuals. Things like, can't remember off the top of my head now, but Cosmos, oh goodness. So basically
cornflower probably.
Yeah, cornflowers and things like that would look good in a bouquet together, that would flower all around the same time, and pretty easy to germinate. You just be planting them in March, sort of 8 weeks before frost, and then plant them out. They're very low maintenance, and yeah, will give you lovely bouquets. Just with I think there's 4 or 5 seed packets in that collection, and it's €24. Wow. And Bellmeadow Ireland sell this collection. Now, there are other Irish companies that do it, but Bellmeadow Flowers have actually packaged them really well. And I know they're lovely seeds. I've had them before, and some of my friends have sown them as well.
Yeah, that's Maria. So Maria has been on the podcast actually talking about cut flower, creating a cut flower garden as well. So yeah.
And the one I'm like, I'd really be into, and if anybody likes dried flowers, she has a dried flowered seed collection. So they're all a compilation of seeds that will dry really well and will again look lovely in a dried bouquet at the end of the year.
Brilliant.
So I think that's an amazing one, especially if you don't know anything about dried flowers, but you want to try it.
Yeah, I love the next one.
Yes, my favorite, cocktail herb seeds collection. So I like my gin, and it's lovely to have something like that. So if you have a nice little planter and just pop all your herbs into it, and then every time you want to have a gin outside in your patio, you can just pluck a couple of herbs from your planter and pop them into your glass. So things like coriander,
probably mint, I guess, is in it.
Mint, yeah, there's a few different mints in this. What else? I'm trying to think off the top of my head.
But they're all aimed at cocktails, anyway.
All aimed at cocktails, but Bellmeadow Ireland sells this as well. It's only €11. I think it's a really nice kind of fun gift to give. Yeah,
and like your sort of Christmas stocking type or your Kris Kindle type gift. It's a nice gift. Yeah. Brilliant. Then you have
just on the subscription. I wanted to mention this. Sorry, John.
Yeah, no problem.
Because a lot of people are going online to get their information now. And one app that really, really helped me when I was planning my garden was it's a subscription app. So it's called Redly. And every so often they give discounts, so they'll give 3 months for free, which is actually amazing. In the wintertime, when you get 3 months for free on this app, it allows you access to pretty much every single magazine that has been issued, including every single gardener's magazine, Gardener's World, Gardener's Illustrated, everything. And it gives you all the back issues. So you can look at the last 12 months of issues. And that's the way I planned my garden. I looked at every single month. I looked at what was pictures in those magazines and what was in bloom. And I picked out the things I liked and I put my list from that. So for free, for 3 months, I did that. But you can sign somebody up to it and send them the link to it. There's different ways of doing it as a gift.
So this is an app that accesses previously published gardening magazines.
Yeah, not just gardening, kids magazines, everything, you name it. But there's a huge range of gardening magazines on it.
Brilliant. I'd never heard of it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was actually Anya.
The flower fairy.
Yeah,
fairy? Yeah.
Yes, she put me onto it last year because she was talking about how useful it was. And at the time they were given 3 months free. And I spent the entire winter every night just going through, taking screenshots, writing my list. And that's how I plan my garden, basically.
There's your organization skills kicking in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very clever. Yeah, very clever. And I hadn't heard of that app. So yeah, that's Readily app. And you can go back on all gardening magazines there. So that's, yeah, excellent. Now, the next category of present is where I would probably spend most of my time, and where my wish list would come from is equipment. But it's great to see, like, my equipment, as I mentioned earlier. I was delighted when I got a leaf blower for Christmas at one stage. And those type of gifts are class. But you have sort of brought in some different stuff here. So let's talk about those. A garden planner and a journal. That's brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, this is what really helped me. But I was a beginner gardener, and I think every gardener likes making notes and writing down what they want, what they're planning on doing. Where am I?
Okay.
Can you still see me, John?
Yeah.
So yeah, the garden planner, I've tried a couple of these on Amazon. Some of them are great, some of them are not so good. The one I got, I think it was €3 or €4, and it basically allowed me to make a plan for every week. So when I didn't really know what I was doing, I would say, right, well, I've sowed this week. I need to pot this stuff on next week. I need to dig up the garden the following week. And then it would give you a monthly plan, and you'd have a weekly plan, a monthly plan, and then space for kind of drawing out your garden and doing all the things that you need to do. So that
makes sense. And I think if somebody's starting, that's a very good, I know I should do it. I don't do it. I get an hour here and an hour there, and I do what I know is next, but I never document it, and I should. And I always actually recommend that people document it on the podcast, but I don't do it myself. So a little bit hypocritical on that one, but yeah, I can imagine.
Into lists, I'm a big list writer. And I feel like if I'm overwhelmed, because I got very, very overwhelmed last year because I didn't understand how much work was involved in growing everything from seed.
Yeah.
And I think you saw what I was trying to achieve. It was kind of bonkers. The amount of space I was trying to fill with flowers from seed. Yeah. So I was frantically trying to keep everything alive. And if I didn't have that book and I didn't have my list, I would have just lost my mind, I think.
Yeah.
So I was able to take things off. I felt like I was achieving stuff. If I didn't get it done this week, I'd move it into next week and things like that. So it became more achievable for me.
Yeah, and definitely if somebody's starting on the veg side again, the same thing falls in. So everyone, as I said, you get into the springtime, and at some point in time, everybody on Instagram is sowing their tomatoes and sowing their different, and all of a sudden you feel behind. And then you do this mad burst of sowing, and 9 times out of 10 you sow too much. A lot of the time for Ireland, you sow too early, and then you get all your crops into the ground if you're able to keep them alive through the cold part of the spring. And then you realize you've nothing coming behind them. So this is where your planner is really useful in a veg sense as well, so that you get your little and often starting to work, and so that you do end up, when you get on later into the late spring and summer, that you have your crops coming every time you need them, rather than just having a big massive glut in June and then nothing after that. So yeah.
And it depends on how your brain works and how you use these planners, because I've ordered maybe 3 of them from Amazon now, and 2 of them I wouldn't even be able to use because they weren't laid out correctly, or they didn't suit my brain. But the first one I got, I think is €3 or something, that I will share it on my stories at some point today or tomorrow, and what didn't work for me. But you can see pictures of them anyway on Amazon, and then decide what sort of thing works for you.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, good idea. The next thing, a personalized apron. Again, I hadn't heard of it. I know from my kind of day job in gardening circles that gardening aprons are huge. Well, they're big in the UK. They're huge in France, Germany, as in almost all gardeners, male and female, wear them. In Ireland, not so much, but they are very practical. I don't wear one. But I can see they are, as I said, they are very practical, and there could be.
Well, the one I mentioned here was more so if you've got grandparents that are like gardening. It's more of, something to write my granddad's garden, or that kind of thing. I think it's lovely for that kind of thing. The apron that I wear myself is it just ties around my waist and has little pockets in it, and it's just amazing because I don't usually have pockets in my trousers, so it's just handy to throw on and have your twine and have your seeds and all that kind of jazz in it. And there's a lovely one in the gardenshop.ie. I think it's only €12.
Yeah,
like a little tool belt. So that's a different version of an apron. The personalized aprons are from the Irish Gardener, and they are lovely for like a relative or something like that might be interested in that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a nice gift, a really nice gift. And again, I hadn't thought of it before. And an apron is a really practical gardening accessory, but for some reason in Ireland we don't seem to, we haven't seemed to have taken to them just yet, but maybe we will. Then you have a gardener's tool belt, which you've mentioned there, and the next one, which again you told me off air that what this is, because I didn't even know. It's a set of overalls. So tell us about these.
Yeah. So well, like if you're into gardening, and like, I mean, overalls are amazing. I know from my circumstances, I've got 3 kids. Sometimes if I need to put on seeds, if they're quiet for 10 minutes, I have to run outside and do that job. And so I can't be changing my clothes all the time. So if I had a pair of overalls just to pull up real quick, like these dungarees are from Lucy and Yak, and they're actually really pretty. They design some for women as well. So they're not like the Irish farmers overalls, the blue ones that everybody wears. Yeah. So they're actually really fashionable. They're lovely. They do ship to Ireland. They are quite expensive, so they're nice to have, give somebody as a gift, because you probably wouldn't buy them yourself, maybe if during the year and that kind of thing. Monkey, they're an English clothing company. They do lovely dungarees as well. They don't have as many pockets in them, but they're quite baggy and cute, and they pull up over your regular clothes. So brilliant. I think that's the thing. It's having them, it's the handy thing. It's the thing that doesn't take much time. You just pull them up over your clothes and head out, and they can whip them back off and when you're coming back in to check the dinner or whatever you're doing.
That makes perfect sense. Like, I know from farming that I would have always, when I was younger, wore overalls, and it was like that. You could literally come in from school, throw the overalls over your school uniform, go down and feed in silage, and then when you went back up, your uniform was still clean for the next day, and you weren't going to be the obvious farmer in the classroom. But I have never used them since. But yesterday I was in my sort of good office type clothes and was doing something gardening related, destroyed my shoes, destroyed my shirt, one sleeve of my shirt, and my trousers. And so I can see why that would be a brilliant gift. I hadn't actually thought of it, and don't own one, but I could see why it would be a really good gift. Yeah. And if they look pretty, I can see why the female listener would like it.
Yeah, they're lovely now. Especially if people are more into Instagram now. If you're doing cut flower gardens, they're very pretty, photographic.
Yeah.
So yeah, they're lovely, and they're good quality as well. I've heard a lot of good reviews about them. Also wellies. But I actually am on the lookout for a good pair of wellies, so I can't even recommend any at the minute that don't leak. They all look pretty, but they don't leak. They always leak after a month or 2.
Yeah, it's funny. I know a little bit about wellies. So there's the colourful, pretty ones that you see for festivals type thing. They're normally PVC and normally not fit for working. The minute you dig a spade into the ground, you'll see a crack or something on it. Then there's other ones that are neoprene based, really good. The likes of the Muck Boot company. They're neoprene based on the inside. There's another brand, Rouchette. Again, they're more leisure, and I think this is where the challenge comes when it's gardening, because the leisure boot is not made for any hardship. And as I said, I think that's where you're getting maybe the issues are, because you need a working boot when you're digging a spade into a ground. But a lot of them are leisure based.
Yes, but I like pretty things.
Yeah. Well, Muck Boot Company and Richette do really good sort of neoprene based ones. A little bit country style, but yeah, but they are nice.
I'll have to move in that direction, I think.
Yeah. Your next one I've definitely featured before, and it'd be interesting to hear your thoughts on it. So you've mentioned secateurs, and I would love that as a gift. So myself, I've mentioned before, I use a Felco number 2. I have used it since I was in college back in the 90s. It badly needs a clean up at the moment, but I have it since that length of time, and it has got lots of hardship and abuse over the years. But I do think a secateurs is probably one tool that farm or gardeners will use, whether you're flower gardening, vegetable gardening, you will use it again and again.
Yeah, and I think people really appreciate it, because I know myself, if I lose a secateurs, I'll run out and I'll grab a cheap one, because that's what you do sometimes. But it's lovely to get a gift of a really good quality one that's going to last, that isn't going to rust on you. There's loads of different brands out there. Like there's just a different scale. Like if you buy one for €5, it's probably not going to last you that long.
No.
But if you get a gift of a really decent one, the gardener shop, I have lovely ones as well, and so do Amazon. There's loads of different places you can buy them. Even Woodies have some decent ones sometimes. Depends.
Yeah. No, I think there's lots of options out there. As I say, for me personally, Felco is the one I always use, just because that's the one I got when I was in college.
Yeah.
And I have it ever since. I know every part is replaceable, and for me, Felco is the one that's copied. So and when you see the one that's copied, then you know that that's the best one. It is on the, in terms of a secateurs, it's on the pricier end of things. You're going to be up at 50, 60, €70 for top of the range models. But for me, something that's going to last you, essentially a lifetime, is well worth it. And if anything breaks or anything gets rusty, or they're all replaced, all the parts are replacement. I think that's a big thing as well.
Yeah, you're obviously very good at minding your tools. You haven't lost it yet.
Well, I've lost it probably a few times, but it's red handled, and it was made with a red handle originally for that reason. So 9 times out of 10 prior to that, they were made with green handles, but the red handle stands out. So if it falls on a lawn or into in a flower bed, the red stands out. Yeah, so that was the reason for it. But no, I've never lost that one long term. No. So
yeah, it's a really good option for a gift, because you'll never probably spend that much money on yourself during the year when there's other things to spend money on. So
yeah.
It's
a good option. Another tool that's not on your list, I mentioned it last year. I don't have one. I don't know that you have one, but everybody talks about them, is the Hurry.
Yes, and it's actually on my list. I don't know why I didn't put it on this, because I would love one.
Yeah. So apparently they're the best thing in terms of a tool for a gardener. As I say, I've never used it. It kind of takes the place of a fork, trowel, knife. It has all of those functions built into the same tool. They're a Japanese tool originally, and I do like a lot of the top gardeners are using them and talking about them a lot. So taking their word for it, I think it's something that would be very, very useful for any gardener.
Yeah, I see a lot of the cut flower gardeners in the UK and America using them, even for weeding, just getting the long taproot, the perennial roots of long taproot weeds, just trying to get them out of the ground. I think they have them in their pockets all the time.
Brilliant. Tools then, as I said, tools would be my favorite category to choose from, and power tools preferably, but yeah, tools I think is a great option. It's really practical, and a number of years ago, Chris Kendall, I got my brother-in-law on Chris Kendall, and they were a little bit like your situation. They'd just moved into a house sort of 2 years previously or 3 years previously. He was starting to do a little bit of gardening, and I got him a sort of a tool hamper. So I bought him all the bits and pieces. And while it's not the fanciest or the nicest present, definitely he's still using that. And then now it's like they're in the house 15 years now, and I know he's still using those. So from that reason, I think tools are a great gift.
Yeah, and it's another reason why this list is so good, because a lot of people do Chris Kendalls now, where you do it online and you can link your product. You can actually add to your list. Yeah. So you can actually tell people specifically what item, if there's a price range.
Yeah.
You can tell them what you want.
Yeah.
Personally, I would love this present. I absolutely love it, because my kids go off with my tools all the time and I don't know what to do with them. I lose them all the time, never have them. My husband goes off and use them for various things and then never come back. So I don't think, even if they have a set, I think another set is always a good idea. You're never going to go wrong with that.
Yeah, for sure. The next one you mentioned, so kids, actually that's a good idea. You have the kids tool bag.
Another reason why I just purchased this for my 3-year-old daughter, because she follows me around like a little shadow and she wants all of my stuff. So I bought her this little, it's like a garden tool bag. It doesn't go around her waist, but she can carry it. It's very light, canvas. And there is like a little
trowel, I guess.
Trowel. There's a watering can with it, a little fork, a rake, and something else. I think it was about 15-16 euro on the garden shop.ie. It's lovely. And they're little wooden handles, so they're not like completely plastic. They're, decent quality.
Yeah. Brilliant. Yeah, it's a good idea. And it means that if your 3 or 4 year old has it, I know, same here. My 4-year-old is always running off with some tool or other. I found screwdrivers, hammers. There was something I went looking for the other day that I only bought about 6 months ago, and it's not in the toolbox, but I know she had it recently. So it's going to turn up somewhere over the next 20 years, probably rusted. But yeah, I can understand why that would be a good gift. And I suppose from the child's perspective, they feel part of what you're doing in the garden, because they have their
and it really
old...
gets them into it. And it's great to get kids with their hands in the soil. It's great.
Yeah, definitely.
It's great for calming kids down when they're on technology a lot as well, like that. It's a very grounding.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah.
Really. And also then there's a little pocket in it for her. So if I give her some seeds, some random seeds, she can go off and put them in a pot. And it's nice for her to see the process of planting something and seeing something grow. So yeah, it's good to get them involved. And
yeah, for sure.
Otherwise, I'm doing hairdresser games while I'm trying to sow seeds. So
yeah,
it's hard to multitask.
Yeah, I know, exactly. The next one you have on your list is vouchers. And I did mention this before, and people either love or hate vouchers. They tend to build up, your vouchers, like your spa voucher. These things tend to build up in houses, I know, because I see them. But vouchers are generally seen as a gift that either people like or hate. But having said that,
I think gardeners would jump at it. Well,
this is where I think exception to the rule again, like a bit like the books. I think
it's
if you give
when you get a voucher for maybe a random clothes shop or Tesco or something like that, because it's like very general. When you get a voucher for someone to buy plants or equipment, I mean, I absolutely love that, because especially if it's a garden centre, like there might be a particular like tree that you want that you won't be able to get the money together for. I know for a lot of my birthdays and stuff like that, all of my family know that it's either a voucher or it's a tree or something, but they don't know what I want. So they'll say, look, I know you want some trees, so here's a voucher for a particular garden centre. And I've gotten a lot of my crabapple trees, my cherry blossoms, a lot of the bigger trees that I wouldn't have been able to afford myself that way. So I love that.
I think that makes perfect sense. And again, as I say, it probably books, it's a little bit of an exception in that the books are the same. Gardeners would appreciate a book, whereas maybe other hobbies, they wouldn't like the book so much, but definitely vouchers. I don't think they'll sit in the shelf or in the press for very long. I think they'll be used very quickly, and at that time of the year, you have within a very short space of time, you have like the real busy gardening season, and I think people will use them very, very quickly.
Absolutely. And there's a lot online, even if the local garden centre isn't an option and you need something quickly, Quick Crop Gardens, shops.ie. There's a lot of Irish websites that sell equipment and even plug plants and things like that. So no, makes sense. Really good gift. The last one on your list, and we'll do a little bit of a crossover then onto a couple, is something homemade, like a nice pot plant planted with bulbs, or so you're talking about a planted container, basically. I mean, I could go on, and this list could probably be my longest list because I love making things. But if you were to buy a nice pot, like there's lovely pots in the garden centre, and just buy a packet of bulbs and plant it, and give it to somebody, especially if they're starting off, if they're maybe not yet a gardener, they've just moved into somewhere and they don't have a garden yet, but they could put pots at their front door. It's a lovely, even daffodils, something like that for a bit of colour. And
something that that won't go wrong.
Yes, basically, yeah. And I've gotten things secondhand of people for the garden, like my patio slabs and stuff like that, and they wouldn't take any money, so I've potted up pots for them, or I would have gotten them a shrub in a pot, and that's something I know if it doesn't fit in their garden, it'll look nice in a pot. So there's loads of stuff. If you're anyway creative at all, there's just so many things you could do homemade wise. And
again, when it comes to something like that, you're looking at benefit over a longer period of time. So you give it at Christmas and just the appreciation of that. But when it flowers, then, if it's daffodils, when it flowers a couple of months later, people remember that's the planter that Natasha gave me for Christmas.
It's a lovely surprise.
It's a nice surprise, and it's keeps that connection there. So I think that's great. You also mentioned plants, and I think I've mentioned this on this episode previously. I think, and it's a bit of a funny one because you have to be careful buying a plant, because I've seen people giving gifts of a tree, whatever, and then the person is, well, I actually hate whatever tree it was, that type of a tree. So you have to be kind of careful there. But the one you mentioned was a David Aston rose.
Yes.
As a, it's a slightly more expensive rose, but they tend to be really, really nice, really good quality, and something that is gifted quite often. So that's a good option.
Yeah, it was my 40th birthday there in April, so I took complete and utter advantage of it. And anybody who asked me, I told them exactly what I was looking for. I was mostly vouchers for trees, but my sister bought me 2 bare root roses from David Austin. They were doing a massive sale at the time, and it's free postage to Ireland. So it was actually less expensive to buy it in the UK than it was to try and source it here.
Right.
Because the delivery charge here in Ireland was more expensive than the UK delivery. So I got the Queen of Sweden, and I got a lovely climbing rose, strawberry fields, and like they look like nothing when they come, but in summertime, like they're still flowering now actually. Brilliant. So it's just one of those, they're really good quality, it's a really good name, it's just a lovely gift to get. I'm big into that now.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I can understand, like a David Aston rose, while plants are a tricky one, because you have to know, if people are going to like what you're buying them, and they don't always. I've heard, I forget who it was, but one of the open gardens, I can't think who it was, but one of the open gardeners that were on the podcast at some stage, so they're obviously top class gardeners, and somebody gifted them a plant or other, and they mentioned the name of it, and they accepted it, and thank you very much, but they hated it and never planted it. And I know that would be the case for a lot of people, especially established gardeners. And then of course you have to know their garden as well. Like you can't just buy a tree if it's going to be massive and they're living in a small garden. So you have to just be careful with plants. But I think a David Aston rose or a nice rose like that, you can't really go wrong with, I don't think.
Yeah, I think if you know the person and you can sort of suss it out, like I know my mum would always accept a rose, and the same with a lot of people I know. But I got a couple of acers for my birthday, and acers are just not going to last here because we have just this massive wind tunnel at this house. There's no shelter, and I had to put them into pots and put them alongside the wall. They'll never be able to go into the garden. And I would have probably said that if I'd known they were going to buy me them. Like I was very grateful, and they're very pretty and I love them, but I just can't plant them in my garden. Yeah,
they're not going to do. Yeah, it makes sense. We've kind of covered most, and as I said, there is a little bit of crossover to what I've covered on it previously, but great to get a different perspective on it. But one that we didn't mention, and it's one that I've mentioned before, and I've seen some new versions of it popping up, or it's basically a course, so gardening courses, and I think that's a really nice gift, and you can get them for, there's different people doing veg garden type ones. There's Jimmy Blake doing his one, Botanic Garden. There's lots of gardeners doing, flower ones or vegetable ones, things like beekeeping courses, and it's not gardening, but it's very, very related.
Yeah. I think that's absolutely amazing. It's one I never even thought of myself. I would love a present of something like that.
Yeah, I think they are. Like something like that is a great gift. again, there's little things that you have to watch out for because the courses could be on set days, you know, things like that. But if that makes sense, I think it's a lovely gift and something that someone's going to get benefit out of for a long term. Like, so if somebody's new to it, to get them a gift of a gardening course or a, you know, grow your own vegetable course or whatever it is, it's a long term benefit. So
absolutely, it's a brilliant idea.
Makes sense. Final question before we start to close off. Money no object, a single present. Now, I've asked this question before and people say, you know, a garden makeover, but that's multiple elements. So a singular item, money no object, what would it be?
Oh God, put me on the spot now. It would be
and you can throw out 3 or 4 and then just settle on one if you want, but
it would probably be something architectural, something that I'm never going to be able to find myself on Facebook Marketplace. I would love, actually the plant that I really want at the minute are 2 standard hydrangeas, which are pretty impossible to get in Ireland at the minute. I've been trying for about a year to get decent ones.
Okay.
But yeah, probably a structural object, like one of those beautiful tall stone planters.
Okay.
Or probably a water fountain, to be honest, would be
water fountain.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they're so expensive, so expensive. Some absolutely stunning ones, but they're just priced crazy. So I love the sound of water in my garden, and I've always wanted one. I have a plan of making one myself, but it's down the line. That's on the bottom of my list. But yeah, I suppose that would be probably, like, I'd love a garden makeover, but I am too much into design myself to let anybody do it, I think. So I think some structural architectural elements. I would love a delivery of wood. That's what I'd love. A massive delivery of wood so I could build my walkway. I have a walkway in mind. It's going to be basically 2 uprights and 1 crossover beam, and it's going to be a curved walkway coming from my patio, and I'm going to have everything grown over it. But basically it needs huge big thick lumps of timber, and at the minute that's kind of unaffordable. So if somebody dropped a trailer load of timber here, I would be the happiest one.
Well, that is the most practical present I've ever heard, a trailer load of timber. I was thinking about this question beforehand, and I know that you're doing a lot of your seed sowing in kind of pop-up greenhouses. And I said, I bet you she'll say a nice glass house.
Oh, like a beautiful glass house would be on my list. I don't even know why I didn't mention that, because I think I'm manifesting it already. It's
it's on the way already. Yeah,
coming to me. Which I'd love, a really stunning glass house. I suppose that would probably be the first thing, and then all the architectural elements, the things that I can't do myself. The wood, the stone planters, those kind of things that really provide structure to a garden.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, so that's as I say, a great list. There's something there for everybody, I think, and there's something there kind of all price levels as well, depending on the gift. It's as I say, a great list. Tell us about your page, where people can find your page. So I mentioned at the start, it's DIY and Dreams, isn't it?
Yeah, so I started an Instagram page during COVID, actually, called DIY and Dreams, and it was DIY based because we bought a house that was abandoned for about 13 years. So there was nothing in it. We had no help. We had very small kids, and we were trying to sort of figure out how to do things in the house ourselves. And as it went on, I realized that the outside of the house, it was basically overgrown with briars and God knows what. So it was making me very sad looking out the window at it. So we started tipping away, and we built a couple of planters. We had a lovely summer then of looking at everything that was in the planters. And then I just got this graw for like wanting to create a beautiful landscape for us. It's just that feeling when you actually finally own something, and you're able to put your own
stamp on.
Put your own stamp. It's exactly like, I worked in interior design for years, and it's lovely to be able to create something in a house, create a feeling, create something that when you walk into it, it creates a completely different feeling. You just have a sense of calm, a sense of awe, and gardens do the same thing for me. So it's so exciting. Like, I think it's kind of harder because we have a big blank space, so we don't have any walls or anything to kind of I suppose to give me a boundary. So I nearly have too many ideas at the minute. Basically what I'm doing is I'm trying to create some kind of garden that it's basically on a budget. I don't have any money to spend on it, so I'm trying to create something out of nothing.
Yeah,
kind of.
and doing a very good job of it, to be fair.
Well, I'm having fun along the way. I've met so many lovely people on the page, just people that are starting out on their own, people I'm asking questions of. There's a lot of lovely gardeners in Ireland and the UK, and I mean, it's not like a competitive thing. It's everybody helping each other, asking honest questions, giving honest answers. Everybody is just so helpful. It's a lovely community, and then you can get to celebrate your wins and, you know, commiserate then when you've like your greenhouse falls over in the wind and you've got nothing left, and people start sending you seeds. And like I've got grasses as plug plants in the post because I mentioned one day I didn't have any grasses and somebody just posted them to me. It's just such a lovely hobby to have, I think. Yeah,
for sure. So go check out that page, because it is, as I said, the information and the stories, and you really are documenting it as you go. And
there is no plan, like as in what I'm doing every day. It's just whatever happens.
Yeah, and you're getting through a lot, and you're doing a lot. So yeah, you're doing amazing stuff considering you only started.
I think that the point of it is a lot of pages helped me in last summer, that they were just figuring stuff out and they were throwing stuff into the ground, and I saw what they achieved, and it just gave me a huge amount of drive and motivation to do it myself. So if anybody can get anything from my page like that at least they understand that last year I didn't know how to grow a seed, and it's amazing what you can achieve when you put your mind to it.
Yeah, for sure. It's been a brilliant chat. Really, really great information. Loved the list, and I'm happy that my lists previously weren't too far off the charts. There was some crossovers.
I mean, I'm sure people would love a leaf blower.
Yeah, well, with the exception of that, now that's just me. Leaf blower, and at one stage I did get a rotavator, and I was very happy about that as well. I don't use it anymore, but yeah, so that just goes to show.
I could do with that here. I'll buy it off you.
Yeah, so as I say, great list, and thank you very, very much for coming on Master My Garden podcast.
Thank you for having me, John.
So that's been this week's episode. A huge thanks to Natasha for coming on. I love that. There was, as I say, I've covered this episode before, but it's great to have a different perspective, different views, and I suppose a female voice as well, because I'm conscious that the last 2 times I've done it, it has been very much my thoughts that are going on to it. So great list. Definitely check out Natasha's page. It's really inspirational for anybody that's starting. Practical. She shows her wins and her fails, and to be fair, there's more wins than fails, but yeah, a really, really, really great page to check out. And yeah, that's been this week's episode. Thanks for listening, and until the next time, happy gardening.